better than the last thing, and eventually someone's gonna pay you for that. Like the guys that my lead QA guy now that I pay more than anyone else on my team started as a forum moderator on the Steam forums for Rise of the Triad in back 2012, and he just bugged me and bugged me. And bugged me. He's like, "Hey Dave, I want to work with you." Hey, I was like, "Cool, you can do this." "Hey Dave, I want to work with you." "Okay, you work the forums now." "Hey, okay, well you can help do community stuff." "Hey, I want to do QA." "Okay, you can do QA." "Hey, I want to bring these other guys with me to do QA." "Okay, cool." "Okay, hey, these are the guys I think you should pay, and if you pay us all monthly, we'll be your core QA team." I'm like, "Cool." And he's like, "Hey," and then I was like, "Hey, I think you should be my lead QA guy," and now I pay more than anyone else on the team, and now that's where he is.
Yeah, and it's all due to his persistence and
being persistent and getting shit done.
Right.
He just consistently did good shit, like helped with everything, and it's to the point where now I can trust him to lead other guys. I don't, as the lead QA guy, he sets the tasks for what QA needs to do. And when one of the developers like Zag puts up a new build for Unfortunate Spacemen, he's in there. He's like, "Okay, guys, we're going to go do a test now," and they go and test it. Meanwhile, I'm fucking off in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll come back and we're going to go run through that tonight actually, and then I'll come in and do my producer director thing and see what I want to change and stuff like that, and then they'll go back in and test it. But now he's if we ever get an office and stuff, my lead QA and dev support guys will be the first dudes that I put on full salary and bring into the office. But there was a time when they just were helping out on the forums, but they did stuff. They were persistent. They got shit done, and now they are employees that get paid because they got stuff done. So I mean, that's what I tell people who are looking to break into anything is just do shit. Be persistent, get stuff done. Like when I was a writer, I was blogging, for free for a website. And then, next thing you know, like a year and a half later, I was getting paid to write features for Kotaku and VG247 and PC Gamer just because I wrote like 1,000 stories over the course of like a year and a half. Some of them were just news posts, but then, some of them were reviews. And I just, I got popular writing good stuff to where the point where I became like a known writer and people were willing to pay me, because I had that experience. So that's what I say, work at the level you can afford that affords you the most experience. I'm not saying go do shit for free, because if you need to get paid. But if you can, do whatever you can to get that experience, because eventually someone will pay you what you're worth. Or they should, at least. I mean, hey, this is America. Who the fuck knows? But like, someone like me will pay you what you're worth if you're persistent in games.
Totally. All right. That was freaking awesome. Thanks for expounding upon that in terms of like just, the day jobs, that work-life balance and everything else. I want to go into a slightly different direction as it relates to like implementation, getting your game out to market. So you've released several copies for the most part. And then like in terms of that, like what is your main, at a high level at least, what is your main go-to strategy when you're marketing these new titles? I mean, you kind of alluded or mentioned briefly about like how you try to set expectations to some degrees, but like what's a go-to strategy? I mean, you have a huge marketing background. Is there anything like crazy that you do or just consistent?
No, I mean, yeah, my marketing background, my MBA doesn't help at all in marketing video games. It would probably help if I worked at an ad agency in New York. So it's hard as hell to get games noticed and out there these days, especially when you make stuff like we do, which is not, survival crafting or horror games or, city building type RTS stuff, which all do very well, right?
Right. Yep.
A game like Frostpunk is always going to do well as long as it's good because it's just, those games just do super well. A game like Raft is going to do super well because people just love co-op crafting survival shit. The Forest, Subnautica, which is the game of the year so far. Holy shit, Subnautica was so good. But we don't make stuff like that. We make stuff that's like Doom and Quake in 20. I mean, we make other stuff too. Like Unfortunate Spacemen is cool because it's a lot like Deceit or Trouble in Terrorist Town. It's a very cool giant multiplayer game. But even then, getting people to play multiplayer games now, especially indie games, is next to impossible. I mean, we struggle to keep people playing on servers and stuff just because it's these are small games. They don't have big audiences. get people playing multiplayer games these days, you either have to spend millions of dollars in marketing or make it free and hope that everyone buys in-app purchases, right?
Yeah.
So what I like to tell people, at least, especially indies, is tell people what your game is. Messaging is more important than marketing. Just putting out a cool trailer and people go, well, I don't know what kind of game it is. You need to set their expectations like immediately. With Dusk, when we put out the initial trailer, I literally beat people over the head with it. It's like, you like Doom, you like Quake, you like Blood, you like Redneck Rampage, cool, you're gonna fucking love this. And it got a ton of views and a ton of press. People were like, what is this? But I told them exactly what it was.
Right.
And a lot of people were skeptical. They were like, oh, this guy saying this game is like all these great 90s shooters. But then we actually came out with it. People were like, holy shit, Dusk really is that good. Obviously, it's not. It doesn't. If we've seen farther, it's only because we've stood on the shoulders of giants, right? We learned from games like Quake and Doom and Blood and Redneck Rampage and Half-Life and Thief and System Shock and all that shit. But I told people knew what Dusk was going in, and everyone who buys Dusk knows basically exactly what it is going in, which is why they are never the thing you want to avoid in this world of Yelp-like user reviews. Is people spending their money on your game and feeling misled when they get to play it, saying, oh, this isn't what I thought it was, what the fuck. That doesn't happen with our games. When you get Dusk, you know exactly what you're getting. When you buy a Medieval, you know exactly what you're getting. And either you like that or you don't, but at least you know what you're getting. And I want to appeal to my philosophy on marketing games these days is appealing to your core first, right? So we make games, let's say Dusk and Medieval are, they're like Doom, Quake, Heretic, Hexen, right? So, we appeal to the people who like those games first and then hope that we can grow it out from the core. If we just shotgunned it out to everyone saying like, hey, here's a game you might like, and we get fans of people who are more familiar with newer linear shooters or like third person, cover-based games like Uncharted or Tomb Raider and stuff, checking this out, they're not gonna give a shit. You got to start with your core first, and then hope for the best. I'd rather have a small core experience and those people buying the game and having those really high user reviews because they know what the game is going in. It's as good as we say they are going in, and they have a good experience. Rather than maybe twice as many sales, but people feeling misled and confused and having bad reviews and bad word of mouth. That's another thing. People ask how indie games do well these days. It's usually word of mouth. Right. It's either word of mouth or some streamer features your game. Like They Are Billions was just like nobody would have. I don't think anybody would have noticed that on early access. It's a really good RTS. Based on a cool concept of turtling, which is, instead of, building your base and going out and, killing the monsters, they're coming after you and you have to survive as long as you can in your fortress, which is a cool idea. But Lyric, who's like the biggest variety streamer there is, played it. And then, Lyric gets thousands of people watching every time he streams, and then everyone saw it. And the next thing you know, everyone else started playing it. Then all the other streamers started playing it. And it just spread. It spread like They Are Billions, like a virus. And it got huge. They sold hundreds of thousands of copies, but it was, total fluke. It could have also flown completely under the radar. It could have been hanging out in Steam Early Access with 20 user reviews, and 400 sales, which is like what happens with a lot of games these days. So it's either you get really lucky or word of mouth spreads. Steam has, become, really algorithm based. And, there's 70 million people on Steam or something, but, your games don't get shown to all of them anymore. I remember when every game on Steam, I remember back in 2012, you had to know somebody at Valve to get your game on Steam. And then every new game that came out sat on the front page rotator thing for like a week and a half. When we put out Rise of the Triad, there was 500 games on Steam. So every game that came out then, you made lots of fucking money. And nowadays, there's 20,000 games on Steam, like hundreds of games come out every day, and you've got to, you can't rely on the store anymore. You can do your best to make sure it gets shown to the right people, or people who like, a Medieval and Dusk get shown to people who like Doom and Quake and, Hexen and Heretic and similar games like Ion Maiden and Overload and other retro shooters. But that's who Steam's going to show your game to now. So you've got to do your marketing and stuff outside of the stores, and you've got to look for other avenues. It's not like it was. Like I like to wax poetic about 2013 and 2014 on Steam when you could put anything out and make money, but you've got to be better than that now. You've got to focus on your players and you got to focus on making sure you get those good reviews and you get good word of mouth and people are talking about it. But a lot of it's just getting lucky. You can't really plan anymore. You can just I think you just got to start with a really good game. It used to be that you can just put something out in early access and work your way up to the game being really done and finished and polished, right? Nowadays, you got to be polished as soon as your game's available. Like when we put Dusk and a Medieval out, like there's no bugs or performance issues in this thing because like you're not coming back from bad reviews. Right. Not on Steam in 2018. There's no coming back from like mixed reviews. I mean, maybe eventually, but I would rather start with a high bar and low sales and then hopefully have a long tail and build up. Because like if you start with a really good reputation, there's nowhere to go but up, right?
Yeah, and that's what you were saying earlier too. I mean, that was part of your whole strategy.
Yeah, and like I said, it remains to be seen. We might not make money. We might have to shut the thing down in a year, but at least we started with a really high bar, and that's what I tell other indies these days. Is if you start with a high bar, and a small group, there's nowhere to go but up. You can't. So actually, well, yeah, there is. You can go down. But I mean, unless you somehow manage to make your game worse over time, that's not going to happen. So Dusk has been, doing really well on Steam, and it's just from word of mouth. And the way Steam works these days, the more people play your games and review them and curate them, the more people it'll get shown to. So you got to try and work the algorithm and make sure that Steam is showing your game to the people that. Again, messaging the people who are going to like your game. If people see Dusk on Steam, it's probably because they like games that are like Dusk, and they're probably going to like Dusk. And then hopefully they hit our page, and they see the media, and they see that it's like all these other games, and they see the good reviews, and they go, cool, I think this is worth $20, and they buy it, and then they join the cult, and they spread the word. But it's not just about Steam, right? There's also, consoles are big on indies now, especially Switch. Nintendo suddenly became super indie friendly. Yep. And we announced it's like a few years ago, it was like indie games on Nintendo. That'll never happen. And now it's like an indie explosion. There's like a big gold rush. I think it'll probably be over by the time we get our games, out on Switch, which is fine. We're not allowed to make any money. Fuck, we hate money. But, and so now it's back on, indies on consoles have done super well. So you have a second life on there. It's not just about Steam anymore. For me, Steam and PC is kind of like where you build your game and test your game and, start at your core. And then once it's out and finished, you can start putting it on the consoles for the mass market. Because there's people that are going to play Dusk on Switch who don't have gaming PCs, who don't have Steam. They just play console games. They got a PS4, they got a Switch, they got an Xbox, and they play console games. They're going to see it for the first time, like in a Nintendo Direct. They're going to be like, "Whoa, what's that?" And they're going to play, and maybe they could be younger. Maybe they've never played Quake, Doom, Redneck Rampage, Blood, stuff like that. Right. And this will be their first introduction to a crazy fast retro shooter.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting you say that too, because I've been hearing that a lot more often as far as like, hey, start at one place that's like fairly easily accessible, like for example, like Steam. I think even Romney at that panel was saying how for mobile games especially, like start release on PC and then port it out to mobile later, because I mean it just makes complete sense to do that, because it gives you a much better foundation to build on from, and then grow from there. So
I'm not putting our games literally anywhere but Steam until they're finished. Like I'm not even like GOG asked if I wanted to put Dusk and a Medieval in early access on GOG, and I said no, not till they're done. As a guy who buys stuff on GOG, I don't want to play early access games on GOG. I want a finished product, that's DRM free and that has, special features, for GOG players. Maybe, there's, some stuff in the game or special this or that you get for buying the game on GOG. Yeah. And also those kind of gamers are happy to wait. They're older players. They want a complete experience, and I don't want to, shotgun it out everywhere. I want to keep the focus in one place. I like to funnel everyone to one place. Right now, if you want our games in early access, they're available on Steam. If you want to talk to us and be involved in the community, you come to our Discord, and that's it. Because otherwise, you have to manage all these other different communities, And
not
there,
just that, from the development perspective too. Like you have the dev kits, and you have to like work out all the kinks of porting it
yeah.
out and like it's just so much more to bite off.
See, and especially as an indie, there's just not, you don't have the bandwidth to do that. So right now, I'd like to stay focused.